Yale Brothers, episode 65.
Hey diddle Dunkin' pumpkin pie, bluebirds sing, buttermilk sky. Hey diddle Dunkin', cat and mouse, once upon a coffee house. Once a little cat came to town, saw the sights and looked around. He spied a shapely, pretty little mouse and followed her straight to the coffee house. The mouse sang songs and played guitar. The cat, he watched her from afar, wishing there with all his might he were the guitar she held each night. Hey diddle Dunkin' pumpkin pie, bluebirds sing, buttermilk sky. Hey diddle Dunkin', cat and mouse, once upon a coffee house. One night by chance she smiled at him. The strings of his heart went bim bam bim. He knew it was love and me, oh my, you should have been there to see the fur fly. Now if you go to the coffee house, you're sure to see this cat and mouse making the big love scene duet like Romeo and Juliet. Hey diddle Dunkin' pumpkin pie, bluebirds sing, buttermilk sky. Hey diddle Dunkin', cat and mouse, once upon a coffee house.
Hello, everyone. I'm Roger Yale, one half of the Yale Brothers. I've got Chris over here
Hello.
with me. Hello, hello.
How's it going, everybody?
It's good to be back in your little hideaway here, Chris. I have to tell you, what you just heard was a song called Once Upon a Coffee House, performed by a group called the Goldebriars. The song is from a 1965 movie of the same name. Now, it was Once Upon a Coffee House / now Hootenanny A Go-Go, based on a story by our dad and chock full of songs by Dad. It was produced by Fred Berney, a name, Chris, you've seen Fred's name forever, haven't you?
Forever, absolutely.
Oh, my God.
I'm looking forward to talking to Fred. This is so exciting.
It is good. It's great. The film was shot in Miami. Also, at the time, my dad had a couple coffee houses. My dad or your dad?
How about our dad?
Okay.
That'll work.
And the folk scene was coming, I'd like to think it was coming to a crescendo just about at the advent of the British invasion. But thanks to our friend Ralph Houghton, I hope that's how I pronounce his last name, and a private Facebook group about the folk scene in the Grove, we were able to connect with Fred. That's exciting as hell. Yeah. And we have him with us on the show today. Hello, Fred. How are you?
Good. How are you?
It's fantastic now that you're with us. Any holes in that intro? Does that seem all right to you?
That seems fine. It's perfect. I mean, I'm happy with it.
Okay. Thank you very much. I guess.
I will say one thing.
Yes, sir.
We shot the film in '64. We finally got it released in April of '65, which is where that date may come out. But we actually finished editing it around September, I believe it was, in '64. We shot during June, and then I think we had a 10 or 14-day shooting schedule. It was really pretty fast.
Wow. Oh my God. Sure. You guys did all. I just saw it again. I got to tell you, I mean, that's a lot of work. I want to cover some ground first. I'd like to cover a little ground, and we spoke briefly on the phone a couple days ago. But can you give us a brief history about Miami and your time there? I know you've had you were there once, you moved away, and then came back. What's your experience there, in the greater Miami area?
Your show probably isn't long enough.
Oh my God.
Hey, take your time.
No, it's okay. Well, I was born in Pennsylvania, but when I was 5 years old, my parents moved to Miami mainly because of my health. So I grew up in Miami. We were from 1944 until I was married in 1964, and the following year we moved to Buffalo, New York. So I was there from 44 through 65. So what is that, 20-some years? I used to think of it as, it was really never like a small town, but I used to think of it as small compared to when we later in life, after high school, after college, when I would travel to New York sometimes, I would say that's the city, and Miami just couldn't compare to that. I mean, it had so many things going, but we did have a lot growing up. But growing up in Miami, looking back on it, it was nice. I went to the same. I mean, since I got married, we've traveled a lot, we've moved a lot. But as a child growing up, we moved in different homes in Miami, always to get into something bigger, with my parents. But I stayed in the same school district, so we really didn't move that far away. So I went to the same elementary school, all 6 years there.
Oh, wow.
It was a junior. They had junior high back then. It was Shenandoah Elementary, which they tore down a number of years ago.
I remember it.
Disappointing going back and finding out I couldn't see my old elementary school. And then Shenandoah Junior High School. That was 3 years, from 7th to 9th grade.
Oh, yeah.
And then Miami Senior High, which I graduated in 57.
Wow.
So it was probably the time that, I guess when you look back on it, other than, the possibility of being annihilated by an atomic war, we really didn't have what's going on in today. I mean, I would imagine even it was rough when we raised our kids, but I think today must be a lot tougher with it. All the things that are going on. I mean, the drug situation and all that. I remember my parents once told me, I might have been just going into high school. They said, never take anything that a person tries to offer you at school. I didn't really know what they were talking about. But I never came in contact with anything that would be like a controlled substance or whatever they even call it anymore.
Oh, yeah.
But it was my interest. I got a tape recorder when I was 13 for my bar mitzvah. A Pentron, which I still have. It's a Model 9T3C. Wow. Maybe, Chris, you might pick that one up. Might be, Pentron. I actually visited the company once.
Oh,
but, yeah. They're out of Chicago. But I learned how to use the recorder. I learned how to edit. I taught myself an awful lot. And this was, I wasn't even in 13. No, I probably wasn't even in high school yet.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was in 1952. But I always wanted to do something with recordings. I mean, my thinking was I wanted to have a company like RCA and NBC. I mean, that was kind of the goal. At first, I wanted to be a singer and a comedian. Yeah. Then my voice changed, and I realized, well, the singing might be out now, but I still thought I was pretty funny. And so someone in high school said, Fred, you're not as funny as you think you are.
Oh, boy. Come on. Whoa. Oh, whoa.
Max Sudical. I don't know where you are today, Max. Oh. Maybe if he listens to this, but anyway, a good friend. I used to, okay, I'll give you an idea of what it was in Miami. I was probably, it had to be when I was about 10 or 11. I would go down. WQAM used to sign on at 6 a.m. in the morning, I think. Wow. I used to take 2 buses and go down on I started doing this on Saturday mornings. Saturday mornings, I used to go down to the radio station. There was a guy named Kirby Brooks that had a disc jockey show from, I think, 7 in the morning till 9 or something like that. But he played for a 15-minute segment. He played a children's record. Honestly, I don't know how that figured into his time slot. Maybe the station wanted him to do something to attract the kids or attract parents to get the kids to listen. I don't know what it was. Yeah. But I used to go down to the station, and I remember, and I would get there before the engineer got there. I'd stand in it was at the top of the DuPont building in downtown Miami. I don't know if that building is still there or not. That's where WQAM was. And I used to wait by the actually by the escalators, just kind of stand there and wait for the engineer to come in. And then we'd go up together. And I don't remember how this all started, but they didn't seem to mind me coming. At least he didn't.
Yeah.
And then I would watch him thread up the tape recorders, and sometimes he'd let me. I don't think he ever let me touch a recorder. He might have let me put a needle on a record once when they were queuing it up. But I just watch. And then I would sit next to Kirby Brooks, probably never say anything, but just kind of sit there. And then one time I said, I've got some records that might be interesting you haven't played that you might find interesting. It was called Johnny's Magic Adventure. And they were special, at least at that time, because there's basically one groove on a record. It goes from beginning to end. These had 4 separate grooves. So each time you started the record over, there was a possibility of hitting a different groove and a different story.
Wow.
So what they did is they designed it. And I found out later when I was doing a search on the internet, they weren't the only record. There was only one I had like that, but they weren't the only company doing this. So that wasn't the only record. But at any rate, it would be an adventure with Johnny. So the first one was like the introduction, and there were 4 different introductions. And then the next 3 sides took him further into the story. And then at the end, at some point, it swung into a single groove, and the ending was always the same. I mean, with a song.
Well, that's
but
interesting.
it would end. He would meet different people, different animals, and have adventures. So I tried to explain this to Kirby Brooks, and he played it, and he only played the first record. And because they were 4 grooves, and a 78, back in those days, 10-inch record ran about 3.5 minutes, maybe 4 minutes tops. So each of these little episodes per record was only a minute long. Oh. So he's playing it, come to the end of the record, and it's the middle of the story. And he turns to me and said, "What happened? It's like we don't hear the end of the story." And I said, on the air, and I turned to him and said, "Well, I tried to tell you, you had to play all 4 records." Well, when he took a break and the mic was off, he turned to me and said, "Don't ever bring another record into this building."
Oh my gosh, man. That's funny.
And then he said later, there's a show on Sundays that's really for kids about your age. Gordon Shaw reads the funnies. And he said, why don't you come in on Sunday? Kind of like, why don't you bug him for a while?
Get off my back, kid.
I got the point, and I started going down, and I met with, the kids, when you're not reading yet, so you're about 5, 6, 7 years old.
Yeah.
So that was the audience. I would sit at the table because they were all young kids, and I was, 10, 11 years old by then. So I would sit at the table with Gordon Shaw, and sometimes he would talk to me, but basically I was quiet about it. But I got to meet when there were, again, I did the same thing, got there early. I knew the engineer by now, but I also got to meet John Arthur with Big John and Sparky, because when anybody would come into town, like the day Brace Beemer came into town, I didn't realize I had planned to see him at the, was at Miami Stadium, I think is where he appeared.
Oh, jeez.
But he was a guest on that show, and that was one Sunday I didn't go. And I thought, if I had gone to the station that day, I would have met the Lone Ranger. So, but I was there the day John Arthur came in, and I used to record his program all the time. It was a section on it. They did a thing at the beginning, and I used to record it. And so I mentioned to him that I had recordings of all his show. And a few months later, when he was doing his show, he mentioned my name on it as well. If you ever want to hear a playback of one of the shows, just ask old Fred Berney for a playback,
Damn.
So I I was so involved in loving radio, loving the equipment. And I took a hobby and I turned it into a profession. In 1956, my brother was in school. Their school chorus sang on the radio. And I knew that they recorded it and then they sang. And I said, if you can get a copy of the tape, I can cut records and get 50 orders. I'll cut records and everybody can have a record of this radio show. Well, I didn't have a record at the time. I just had a tape recorder. But I'd figured it out. I knew I could buy a disc cutter for about $50. and an amplifier for maybe another 50. And if I sold the records, anyway, I had figured it out that if I sold 50 records, that maybe it was $2 a piece, I could get myself a record cutter.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. And got a rubber stamp that said Fred Berney's Recording Studio. And that was the start of the recording studio, December of 1956.
What a story.
And it's had its ups and downs over the years. I've sometimes worked for other producers, but the business has always maintained a life. Whether it started as I was told by another gentleman that owned a recording studio up on Flagler Street. He said, if you're going to use your own name, don't make it Fred Berney's, make it Fred Berney. But one day I was looking at a book on my shelf, and I love science fiction, but I had a book by Arthur Clarke. And it was not fiction. It was about satellites. And I looked at the word satellite and I thought, that's a strong name. I kind of like it.
Yeah.
So I checked with my father had an attorney, and I asked him, I said, do I need to check with this? He did a quick check. I think there was a satellite something doing, I think satellite records, but they were nowhere near what I was doing or whatever it was. And he said, you should be okay with it. So we registered the name. He misspelled satellite the first time, and I said, because he said, all you really have to do is print it in the newspaper, but then they misspelled it. I said, does that mean I have to change the way I spell my name? He said, no, just run the ad again correctly.
That's it.
But that was it. So satellite, it was started as Satellite Recording Studio. When I got into doing things with radio shows, it became Satellite Broadcasting. As I got involved with film, it became Satellite Film. When video came on the scene, it became Satellite Video. And finally, when we were talking at a convention once about how video was beyond that, I thought, media seems to be the right word. So then it became, and it still is to this day, Satellite Media.
Very good.
Oh, my God. That makes perfect sense.
So the years I was in Miami, I had the recording studio. The idea of and that's where I came to meet both Roger and Carl, your uncle, your parents.
Oh my God!
And I don't remember how, except I know that the Hootenanny Coffee House. Darn it, what was the address? It was on 59th Avenue, wasn't it?
I'm
sorry, 57. 57. My father's office, which he gave me the back room for a recording studio at the beginning, was on 59. It was 5935, and as I remember, 57th was the main street. That was a main avenue. That was it. You had all the lights. You go straight down and connect with Coral Way eventually from that.
Oh my God!
And I think that's where the Hootenanny was. I think it was on 8th Street and very close to 57th.
But they call Calle Ocho.
It's all changed now. The neighborhood is different. In fact, I Googled it the other day and I tried to look at the storefronts, and they're completely, obviously where there was a parking lot where the end of the building was, and on the side of the building, my father let me put my sign up, and he has his sign up for the insurance business. Oh. It's now there's no parking lot now. That's a completely building all the way through.
Oh, for sure.
But anyway, I probably, because I liked folk music, and that was the time that the Kingston Trio were recording, and so I started going there, and then I always had the ideas of wanting to, do some kind of a radio show. Prior to that, I was trying to see if I could bring back radio drama. Nice. I had actually met with Joseph Cotton for lunch once because I had an idea that we could do something like the Mercury Theater, where Cotton would be the host.
Outstanding.
But he didn't have to be. I could send him the openings and the spots, the little intros he would do. Yeah. He could be in California. He could read those, and then I would cut them in. That's a whole other story. I mean, but anyway, because of that, I guess when I went to the coffee house, I kept thinking, this could make a good record. All these performers, and so I talked to Roger about it, and I sent you pictures. I hope you got them. Or are you familiar with the record?
I just got the pictures. Chris has got the LP somewhere, but it would be almost impossible to find it in a timely manner. But
I know we're audio, but I'm showing you something that you can probably see on the screen.
Oh yes.
And that that's that really, because of this record, the movie came into being.
That's and the LP's called Night at the Hootenanny.
Night at the Hootenanny Coffee House. We had, I'm looking at the back because that's Phil Koss, Helene Slack. I had a little bit of a crush on her. I don't know why. She was looking at it. And then I found out she lived with snakes. I mean, she had pet snakes. She lived in the Grove, and all of a sudden, no, I don't think I want to date her.
Oh my God! How do you manage to get all those? So there's live recordings at the Hootenanny.
Yeah, what we did is, I know we probably Roger convinced them that this would help their career, because we didn't end up paying anybody for the recording. I mean, we thought, we may have made some. I don't think there was any arrangement for them to receive any kind of a commission or a royalty on the songs they did.
Right. Understood.
But it was Mike Piel who was the. He played, but he also was the announcer most of the time at the Hootenanny. He would have been considered, I guess, really the music producer on this, because he arranged for all the singers and he kind of selected what songs they would do. They came into my studio. I don't think we took pictures of them at the coffee house, but we did all the recording in my studio, which was a very small studio.
Oh yeah.
And I remember, in fact, I've got all the tapes. I came across some of them the other day, where all the different takes we did on these different numbers, because I would have thought everything was fine, but they were these people, they wanted to make it just perfect.
Right.
And then, in fact, it's funny, when we finally released it and they stood up on stage holding it up, the front of it has a beautiful picture of Helene Slack, and it lists all the performers, and it's in a black and white picture, and it just really stands out. Well, the back lists all the performers, and each one has a little bio. In fact, when I had the record company print this, they gave me a cost, for it, and then I finally gave them the copy I wanted for the back. And the guy, I remember telling over the phone, he says, "I didn't think we were printing the Bible." He said, "That's a lot of copy." The font is extremely small, but they squeezed it all in. But there's a photograph of, let's see, what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, there were 10 performers, so there were 10 pictures on the back,
wow,
which is a lot of pictures on a 12-inch album.
Sure. Along
with the list of the records, of the songs, and a little, like I say, paragraph about each performer.
Nice.
So I remember when I think I had my parents come with me at the opening when we had the record ready, because I know that my father had made the remark later, but Mike Piel stood up and he held the album up, but instead of holding the front of the album, he held the back, which had everybody's picture on it, but it wasn't the thing you would see in the store, and it really wasn't the selling point of the record.
Oh, no.
And this is what they wave around, and my father later said to me, "Why didn't they hold up the front of the album?"
Yeah.
Fred, you got to hold the front of the album. Anyway, we did that. We also did a recording, and the union wouldn't let us release it without paying everybody union fees. But we had already, everybody that we recorded agreed that they would go along with getting paid, a very small amount of money just to get this thing released.
Yeah.
I mean, they were more interested in having their music out there than they were, making this a commercial event. I mean, they probably knew we weren't going to sell an awful lot of these, but I met with the union, and they said, "Well, you're going to have to pay everyone scale." And I said, I can't afford to release the record then. They said, "Well, then I guess you won't release it."
Oh, no.
But we have this great record. But your father, I think it was Roger that produced, it was the Columbus Day Hootenanny. Again, you might remember that one? Or do you
I remember that? There was a live recording somewhere, and our dad was Carl, and Uncle Roger was our...
oh, that's right. That's right.
But I remember, does this have something to do with something at a convention center?
It might have been. I have to look at the tape to see where we recorded it.
At some bigger venue.
But it was, I recorded it. We recorded it live,
Wow.
And then the idea was we were going to run it as a live recording on a record because it timed out. I could, cut out, I think, some of the, it may have only run a little over an hour or whatever it was, but it would have fit, I think, on a single record with a little bit of editing.
Wow.
And I have it, in fact, all put together. It's on a tape, and it could have, I can release it now if I've thought about it. I thought, well, nobody's around anymore that
Exactly.
even know about this.
Oh,
So would it really matter? Although I couldn't put it up on YouTube because they probably say it's all copyrighted. And I said, well, it was a performance. But at any rate, that was so. Then, but again, Roger, I know I met with both your dad and Roger, but I think because I was at, let's see, the Hootenanny was owned by Roger, and Carl had the one on Douglas Road, wasn't it? The coffee house,
and that would be the coffee house.
Right, right. Which we used for the exterior of the movie. We used the exterior for that one scene in the movie where the car pulls up, and we were all the exterior. Anytime we showed an exterior, it was the coffee house because it had a real nice look to it. I can't remember what the outside of the Hootenanny was, but I think it was like on a strip. It was like a storefront kind of situation, wasn't it? It's been so long.
Oh my God, Fred, thank you. This is a blind spot for us, so that
we don't know.
Hearing the info from you is awesome. I did see how cool it was, like on the exteriors in your film, but also, what was I going to say? Something that surprised me, and I hope I'm not going off on a tangent because I do want to pick your brain about the movie, but it was a set. It was an interior. Can you tell us a story about that again?
Sure.
Okay, that's awesome.
There might have been talk about shooting it on location because my thought was this was going to be a low budget movie. Well, let me just tell you how the movie. I mean, I'm going to go into it, but let me give you an idea, a little background on the movie.
Yeah,
come on, brother. That's awesome.
Roger would be telling me all the trials and tribulations of owning a coffee house. I mean, this would go on. I can't remember what it was, but all of a sudden I said, you've got this could be a story. This could be a movie. I said, can you, and I said, and I think he said, yeah, they could write it. And Carl said, well, I could write the music because I said we could use all the, the acts here. And I tell you, the movie, the teenage musical had come out, Tammy, and it was nothing but a series of it was rock and roll, but it was just musical performances.
Nice.
And I thought we could do the same thing with folk music, but we'd build a little story around it. We'd have a storyline too, but it would be a vehicle for folk music. That was the whole idea.
Okay.
So my father had if you, like I said, this could be a book. One of the things we did, we got involved. I had been working for someone in college while I was in college. I had the recording studio, but I kind of got a job. My father knew somebody that produced the commercials for drive-in theaters. Oh. And he needed someone to help edit the films. They were shot in 35 millimeter. And I hadn't even started it. I guess I just started at the university. So I went ahead and I took it, and then I was doing a little bit of camera work, but they had a cameraman. He was teaching me how to use a hand crank camera. I mean, I learned a lot from people, more than I would, could have ever. I mean, I learned the practical end of the business while I was learning the book learning in school.
Understood 100%, man.
100%. That makes sense.
It's altogether different. But anyway, found out at one point that this person had, when he hired me, I guess needed some money. He had a partner. That partnership broke up. So he approached my father to be a partner with him. My father thought it might be a good investment, so he put money into it. One day I was sitting down noticing what we were selling the commercials for, and I said, Dad, it costs X number of dollars to produce one of these, and we're only getting, let's say we're getting $95 a spot, but it's really costing us $150 to produce them. Yeah. I don't think we're making any money. So he met with the owner, and it was a parting of the ways, but my father ended up buying him out. I mean, that was kind of the finish of it. Well, then buy me out. So now we owned a company, but we weren't quite sure how to sell screen advertising. This man was a super salesman of this type of selling. But at some point, so then we found another company in town that was doing exactly the same thing, and they were looking for someone to kind of invest with them. So my father got together with this gentleman, and so we're doing these commercials again. But then he had the idea to produce a film. At that time, the Russ Meyer's type of film was being made. They were called nudie. They were R-rated because of nudity, but they didn't have any sex. They didn't have any violence. They were just plain Playboy magazine brought to life.
Kind of thing, had the vixens and all that. Yeah.
Yes.
So somebody came up with a script called Sextet. Not the same one that
Mae West
did.
Mae West.
Mae West. Hers was done after ours, I believe. But it only, I think they put it together for $20,000 some. It was a very low budget film. I know I worked on the set. I did the sound work.
Wow.
But anyway, that was through a long thing that was finished. And then at one point, my father said, well, if I can produce a film for my partner, I can do one for my son. And I must have talked to him about wanting to do a film about the coffee house. So he said, all right, I'll give you, I think he said $30,000.
Wow.
And I said, Dad, I think it's going to be more like $60,000. And he said, wash your mouth out with soap. I remember that line. And that could be the title of my book. I don't know.
I love it.
But so anyway, we had the script. We went through two different directors, and I won't even get into that now. But at any rate, the thought was to we had a low budget on this thing. So I thought we would probably shoot at the coffee house. But when we actually looked at it, it was too small. It wouldn't light well. I mean, everybody said, no, it's only going to be cramped. We're better off going into a studio. Reela Films, Channel 4 also owned Reela Films, which produced, what do you call it, industrial films.
Okay, and what's the name? What was the name of it?
Reela, Reela, Reela Films.
Nice.
Owned by Wometco, owned by Channel 4, and we then decided, we were going to build sets, and I was going to, and to cast it, I felt we had to go to New York to get our leads. The idea was at least to try to get a couple of names or people as much as we could and bring those out of New York. But what I finally did is I think I went to Epic Records, and they showed me they had the Freewheelers and the Goldebriars, I believe, under contract. So they said, we can give you them. They wanted to release they talked about wanting to release the album, but they only would release it if we used their music. And I said, no, we have our own music. So, maybe that was, looking back, I don't know. We would have had an automatic release on that, but I said, no, we're going to use our own music. I said we could use maybe some of yours, and they said no, we wanted to do all of it. So anyway, but we got the acts. I went to the Bitter End in New York.
Nice.
And I heard Jim, Jake, and Joan perform. I know you asked me about the sets, and I guess I got sidetracked.
That's okay. This is awesome.
But I remember seeing her perform with the group called Jim, Jake, and Joan. And I thought they were funny. I thought she was funny. And so I gave them my card afterwards, and they said, well, talk to our manager. And we arranged to have them come down. And then we set up to have the Goldebriars and the Freewheelers come down.
Yep. I think I need to interrupt to just let everyone know that this was the first ever appearance of Joan Rivers in a film. Correct, Fred?
Right. That is correct. She had not appeared in any kind of a movie prior to this. In fact, once we made the movie and I was hoping she could come in for the premiere, her manager said, well, she's broken up with the group. She's on her own. We're trying to give her a new image, and we don't want to do anything that would associate her with the group.
Oh, my God.
Hey, I could have her. I mean, it would be because we had a premiere of the movie in Miami. We actually had an opening night. We had the spotlights. My father arranged to get a permit to put up a real spotlight, like a Hollywood thing.
Yes.
And we had, I can go on, but let me get to the set. You want to know about that? So
this is awesome.
What we decided, so then we were going to build the sets. Originally, I talked to a company in New York that was terribly expensive, and and they were all union. and that's another thing. We ended up being an all-union film. But I thought maybe we could do it a little less expensive with Miami talent. And the funny thing was that when I hired this company in Miami, it turned out to be they were affiliated with the one in New York. Oh. And the guy walked in that I had been talking to in New York, and I guess at that time I was early 20s, 23 probably.
I love it.
And I could have been a little brash in what I said, and he looked at me and said, "Well, looks like you got me anyway."
There it is. That's crazy. Oh my God!
But they did a beautiful job. So we built these. The sets were built in the studio, and it looks just like you're in a coffee house. I mean, it looks like you're in a building. It doesn't have that studio look at all.
It looks terrific. Looks terrific.
Yeah. The film. It's a shame. The film. I found out years later that the prints that Kodak was making, Kodacolor, tended to fade.
Oh my!
And the original negative, which at one point they almost gave to me because we were keeping it in a bank vault, and when we made some arrangement about some financial things, the bank was going to give me the negative. Oh. And of course, in school I was taught negatives have to be kept in a cool place. Florida's warm. I figured the vault was the safest place for it, and I said, "Oh no, don't give me the negative." I said, "Keep it in your vault."
Oh.
The only drawback was the bank went out of business, and by the time I found out and tried to locate whatever had been in their vault, they didn't know anything about it.
Oh, well, I hate that loss. I hate that feeling.
So when we went to go to a tape on this, or even all we had were five prints that were struck by the lab, and it's a lot. It's expensive. I forget what the cost was, but they're not cheap. Making a 35 millimeter, a lot of independent movies are shot on 16 millimeter films. A lot cheaper.
Yeah.
And we decided, and I think I probably even thought about that, but my cameraman said, "Fred, if you want to do this right, it should be on 35 millimeter." Well, I had been shooting 35 for commercials, so I understood that. But I also owned an Aeroflex camera, which was not a cheap camera, but it was a lot less expensive than a Mitchell camera, which is what all your features in Hollywood were shot on for years. But the Mitchell is a big camera. It requires literally an assistant cameraman to rack the focus, because it's not like an Arri where you can look through the lens with your eyepiece, and with one hand you can adjust your focus. That Mitchell, as I recall, I think you have a separate viewfinder, but it's not seeing what the lens is seeing. Oh, so you need someone to actually focus the film, the camera. And my thought was, well, we can put this on a regular, fluid head, maybe tripod, but no, Mitchell camera is too heavy for that, so it would have to go on a crane or a big, tripod. And my cameraman at that point had said, "I've never run one of these because it's a matter of the the way they were hand crank to tilt. You used hand crank wheels to pan. You used another hand crank wheel. So it's like chewing gum, and you with one hand it's rubbing your belly and patting your head at the same time. You're cranking. If you want to do a pan, you're cranking with one hand, and if you want to tilt the camera, you're cranking with the other." And he said, "Really, I've never done that, so we're going to need an assistant cameraman." So we had a director of photography, which was Will Jones, and he did the lighting. We had the assistant cameraman. I was doing sound for about maybe 1 week when the director felt that he didn't want to have to get me to take a pair of headsets off to hear him. He really wanted me off the set. I think I was
stick some headphones on him.
It was like, let's get him out in the field so I can do whatever I want to do. I was trying to control him to keep within budget.
Right.
And it was on site. At one point, everybody told me, "Fred, we think you know enough about this. You could probably direct the movie. We'd stand behind you. We'd work with you." Nobody was really happy with the director. He was, and I found him in New York. I'll tell you who I was offered. This is what makes it so. I mean, that's why I say that when my brother and I talked on the DVD and we talked about what it was like to make the movie, and I say, buy the DVD. The movie is great, but honestly, listening to us talk about it, I think, is worth way more. You'll get more information out of if you want to make a movie out of that than trying to look at what we did on film, because everything that you could imagine was an obstacle or was something we had to deal with.
I understand. Oh wow! Wait, hold on. I want everyone to know that there is a commentary track on it on the DVD, and I did see part of that, like for the opening, the titles, and you guys were talking. So that's good. If it's the rest of it, that's really cool, Fred.
And Alpha is the one that's distributing it for us. So I would suggest, if I can promote them.
Please. Yes, please.
Alpha is the. I think it's. I'll have to check their I'll check their website, or you could do that for me. But it's Alpha Video. They were putting them in the stores. They had one time they had 5 in one of the stores I know up in our area. But they certainly do a big mail order business, so you can buy it direct from them.
We'll be sure to include that info in the show notes, Fred.
Okay, good. So anyway, when I went to get a director, I went to I believe it was I think I started with William Morris Agency. There were 2 agencies in New York that were big, and I can't remember the name of the second one. I have all the letters. I mean, I could literally go through the file. I've got Joan Rivers' signature on a contract. I mean, I have. One of the things that lasted is we saved the file folders, and I've got those with me now. I had my brother send me all the paperwork on it because I wanted to make sure we had everything I needed if I ever had to go back to it for some reason. But at any rate, they offered me Chris Nyby as a director, Chris Nyby Jr. Chris Nyby, at the time I didn't know the name, but since then, he's the one that did the FBI in Peace and War, the FBI television show.
Oh, geez.
He did. I know. I mean, he did some major TV shows, and I thought I could have had him, but it was like twice the cost of what we had budgeted for a director. But had we known, we were starting with about a $30,000 budget. We got to go up to about 60, and at some point when we realized we were going to get close to 100,000, my father, now this is back in the days when you could go to a bank and you could simply say to them, my father was a businessman. He owned an insurance agency. He had started a few years earlier an insurance company, kind of lost that because of somebody took it away from him. He didn't protect himself with contracts, but he was known to his banker as someone that was honest, as someone that had a business. So they basically on his signature, he got the 30,000. He got it raised to 60,000. When we needed more money, we actually by that time we had finished shooting enough that we had some of the work print and we put it together. We showed the bank a 2-minute scene, and they loaned us. I think they gave us a line of credit up to about 100,000 based on that, on a signature. I think eventually he might have had to put some collateral up. I don't know if it was the home or maybe just the car, but basically this was all being financed on a signature on a person's name.
You'll love it.
But if I had known we were going to end up with that kind of a budget, yes, I could have hired Chris Nyby. I was offered Jerry Van Dyke for the lead, Dick Van Dyke's brother.
Yeah, oh my God.
He wasn't known at the time. They showed me footage of him. They said, this is him in a small show. It was either a TV show or a spot or something. All I knew was that, I knew Dick Van Dyke, but I didn't know Jerry Van Dyke. But and then the other person they offered me was, he was on Hollywood Squares. Who's the comedian that
Paul
used to do a lot of Paul Lynde.
Paul Lynde.
Oh. But I didn't think he was strong enough to play the lead to kind of do like a love affair. I mean, I didn't think he could do that kind of a role, and I think even the director or the other people didn't think either. But he was offered. I could have had him for again a little more than we ended up paying the let's say completely unknown people. I mean, at the time, Kurt Taylor was. I think he had done some commercials. Oh yes, he was in a commercial for a toothpaste or a mouthwash or something because he kisses a girl, and it was something like Kissing Breath or something like that.
Oh.
He was in that. That commercial was getting a lot of play.
Yes.
And Karen Thosell, who was our other lead, she was doing a soap opera at the time.
Nice.
So they had some exposure, but not film. And they were good. They were good performers, but we could have, again, like I say, I could have had. I went to, in fact, we shot this whole thing started probably the beginning of '64. Like I think the radio show took place in 1963. I can't remember when, but I got married in February of '64. I met Ellen in January. January. I was that in itself is a story. I mean, honestly, someday if you want to do something on that, it was. Met and married within 6 weeks, 7 weeks. Proposed on our first date. And it was actually the date to the coffee house that I proposed. I came back to the recording studio to return the equipment. I had invited Ellen. I said, "You want to see how our radio show was done?" And I took her to the coffee house, picked her up, took her to the coffee house. We recorded that on Thursday night, and then we played it on the radio. I did the editing, and then we played it the following Wednesday. So I brought it to my studio, and we cutting her. I said, "Here, I'll show you how a record is cut." And while we're cutting it, I turned to her and said, "Well, we'll play that for our kids sometime." And then I realized I probably had proposed. Yes. But that's, like I say, that's you talk about tangents. That's way off.
No,
That's
but how sweet is that?
That's an amazing story, man.
I love it. It's sweet, and I love it very much. And this is a joy to talk to you. I have to ask you this. The music, did my dad write all those? Because I want to be safe when we...
Yes, I believe, in fact, there was a time I wanted to bring in a young lady that I had met. Actually, I knew her brother. Her brother was an attorney. We had gone to on a trip with a group to Jamaica, and I was telling him I was going to be doing a movie, and he said, "Well, his sister sang, and he wanted to get her in. You know, he could get her in. He wanted to see if he could get her in the movie." And she had just cut a record, so I was going to have her come on and do her record because she had a record that was already released.
Nice.
But then your father, in a very nice way, reminded me that our contract was that all the music in the film was to be written, that would be performed, would be music he had written, with the exception of a star performer, which means that a star, as he defined, because I figured, okay, well, she's kind of a star. A star was a person whose name appears above the film.
Oh my gosh!
And I didn't know that, and I don't know. I guess that's true, but I don't know if that was. But it stood. I mean, as you're doing this, I thought, I would have been happy to do everything on a handshake, but it was better to always have a contract. And your dad was right. I mean, this it would have. If we had put other music in, it would have taken away from the idea that it had the same feel, the flow, and again, he wanted reasonable. He wanted to be able to say, all the movie music was by him, which was the right thing to do.
My gosh.
But that's how I can answer without looking, except for Oscar Brandt, who brought in two songs his own songs. All of the other performances, all the other songs, even if they were just a quick little couple of lines, like I think Jonathan on the Boat sings a couple of lines, they were all written by Carl. So
this is wonderful.
The script was initially written by Roger. We had the first director was going to be come on. I'll think of him later. I'll give you the name.
Okay.
But when he started talking, I realized he was thinking of it as an art film. I didn't have that in mind. I had a comedy, a light comedy, musical. He didn't even know what a mantle was, because there's a scene where Jonathan goes horseback riding and then can't sit down, so we have him eating standing and eating off the mantle of in a hotel room. Well, it was an old joke that if you got spanked or something like that, you couldn't sit. You'd have to eat off the mantle. I don't even know if that still makes sense.
Oh, that's funny.
There's so many colloquial things. But he didn't even understand that joke. And I thought, oh, boy, we may be in trouble. So we then ended up searching for another director, and that's how I got Shepard Traube. He was he'd done a lot of musical things back in the 40s, these short musical things with Frank Sinatra or with like different bands. He shot a lot of those. And that's what they showed me. Oh yes, his one movie, his name appears in Miracle of the Bells as a director, probably second unit. But that's what they showed me at the time. They said, well, he also directed Miracle of the Bells. Well, I knew the movie Miracle of the Bells. I had seen it, I guess, on television. And I thought, okay, if he could do that movie, he could do ours. But then when I looked at the film, where's Shepard Traube's name? Well, I think it's buried in the credits. I think you have to go on IMDb now.
Oh, no. They pushed him hard.
He might have been second unit or something like that. And Alpha thought they found something about him, and I said, I don't think you got the same Shepard Traube, but maybe. But I did know he did these musicals because we sat and watched them in a screening room once. And I thought, okay, well, he understands music, so, But at any rate, it was rough working with him. He tended to shout a lot. Like I say, there was a time where they were thinking we could just, it would pay just to even pay him and have him go home, and we would just finish the movie, without him. But I was afraid because I knew my father had all this money into it, and I thought I didn't know anything about directing. I mean, I was so, when you're young, you think you know everything. And I had just gone to University of Miami. I knew everything there was about film, right?
Of course. Of course.
But oh my goodness, but then I thought I was afraid for his, that maybe this wasn't the right idea. Looking back, who knows? It might have. Everybody said, "Look, Fred, we'll work with you." The cameraman, the lights, the guys. So it may have worked. It may have worked. It may have worked to our advantage. I don't know. But at any rate, so in order to get one of the things Shepard Traube did in order to meet the schedule of completing by a certain time and also bringing it in under within some kind of a budget that we were now over, he started cutting pages. Your dad, Roger, your uncle, had written a scene. There's a storyline about this painting of a nude girl with a guitar.
Yes.
Nobody knows. Everybody thinks it's it's Vicky. It's the lead in the movie.
Yes. Just saw it.
And I have that picture, by the way. I was thinking about the other day. Do you think that would go on eBay?
Why not? Oh my God.
I'll tell you what the picture is. We try to get. I may have the first one. We had an artist. We had somebody for very little money paint the picture, and it didn't look like a real person. It was just not a good painting. Nothing that you would really want to hang up anywhere. So someone said, well, why don't we take a picture of somebody in the nude holding a guitar, and then we'll just paint over it. We'll color it in, blow it up life size, color it in. So I turned to our lead at that time, Karen. I said, Karen, because that's who the picture was, people were thinking it was of.
Yes.
I said, can I get you to do a pose for this picture? No, I'm not going to do it in the nude. No. So I don't know how this happened, and it's a shame Vince is no longer with us.
Vince Martin.
Yeah, Vince Martin. I was a little bit in touch with him for a while. We found each other on Facebook, and I was amazed, and we corresponded for just a little bit. But he volunteered his wife. She accepted.
Oh, that's awesome! Good God, that's awesome.
I never got to see the pictures they were keeping, but they kept. It was just good. They kept the privacy, but they did. That is what it is. It's a picture. It's an actual photograph on which they just painted, and it's so it's life size. The darn thing stands, I guess, over 5 feet high. I mean, it's a very, or almost 5 feet. It's a very tall picture.
Oh my gosh!
But it's It's actually a photograph, and I don't think anybody knows that. That's kind of new information. We may have talked about it on the DVD. I can't remember now, but that's something. But anyway,
I just saw it.
Where were we?
That's awesome. I have to say that pretty soon I've got to.
That was I just want to say that was Dad in the shades trying to be tough.
Yeah, the cameos were awesome. Thanks for.
Oh yes. In that dream sequence.
Yes.
Yeah, he's in a scene. We also used the guy that did that was also the one that was the dancing for one of the Abbott and Costello and Jack and the Beanstalk that had a dance number.
Yes.
And so the man who did that, I should grab the album because I can't remember his name. I apologize, but he did that. He did our dream sequence. He appears as I think he does the main dancing. But you're right. Roger was in Carl. Carl, right, was with sunglasses. Was in it. We were, in fact, there's a scene where we wanted to fill up the coffee house with a lot of people, and we brought in, I think, a lot of the crew. Where it's where they just before I think Oscar Brand goes on stage. There's the scene cuts to where the outside of the coffee house, the inside. There's a beat on some bongos or drums, and then you see all these. The camera pans across the room. And you see all these people. We wanted it to be filled. Yeah. And so we didn't have enough extras, so we brought in, and I thought about it recently. I want to go back and look at that scene. My wife was doing the wardrobe. And so I thought, I wonder if she got in that picture. She probably said no, but it would have been funny because we had, honestly, the script girl was in that. I think we used a lot of the crew in that shot. All it was, they were just bodies filling the space, and the camera was just panning across them. So it's possible that that your dad and uncle might have been in that scene. I can't remember.
So basically, it was all hands on deck.
It was all hands on deck, and I want to thank you. And I know we're running short of time because I've got to go. Yeah, but I want to ask you that. I want to thank you for including the little twins in there by the Royal Castle. I just saw that. It blew my mind. That's crazy, and I just I truly love the fact that we're talking almost 60 years on from this movie. Chris and I will be 59 in July, but I truly hope the intervening years have been kind to you, Fred.
Let's just say these last few years with Ellen coming down with Alzheimer's and then she passing away last July.
Very sorry.
That's something I'm working through, but as far as everything else, I mean, I was hoping I wanted to produce a lot of films, but at least I got one. I mean, how many people do you know that produced a feature film? I thought, if nothing else, I'm one of the few people. When I talk to people, I said, "Well, how many friends do you know that are in IMDb?"
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Fred, you know what? Amen to that, man.
Amen.
But yes, it's been a good life. If I had to do over, I'd probably do a few things I would want to see happen a little differently, but I would probably still do them the same. Maybe I would like to see the results a little different. That's all.
I know that's things we don't have control over, my friend, but yeah, I'm with you.
Oh my gosh. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us. This is magical.
Truly,
for
man.
us.
We have heard your name for obviously decades.
And the coffee house, and it's kind of been a blind spot because there was so little. And I just thank you for your being gracious and talking to us.
Well, thank you for letting me go on like this. I mean, it's
pleasure, man.
Owen used to say, "Fred, you talk too much," and I think she was right. So,
God bless her.
Man, I appreciate it. We appreciate it so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Right.
Thanks. Bye. What a very interesting conversation with Mr. Fred Berney, the producer of Once Upon a Coffee House. Thank you, Fred, for coming to the show and having a chat with the Yale brothers on episode 65. Okay, so we're going to play this out with one more song from my dad called Honey Bunny from the original soundtrack to Once Upon a Coffee House. Thanks for listening to episode 65. We're the Yale Brothers. You can find us at yalebrothers@gmail.com or the Yale Brothers on Facebook. And last but not least, I have one more thing to say. Rock and roll.
Honey from the red rose, honey from the white, honey from the red, red rose. I want to be with my honey tonight. Honey bunny, honey bunny, honey bunny. I want to be with my honey tonight. Honey bunny,
bee buzzes round and round.
honey bunny,
From the flowers all day.
honey bunny.
I were that big little bee.
I buzz round my honey and say, honey red rose, honey from the white, honey from the red, red rose. I want to be with my honey tonight. Honey bunny,
From the daisy to the daffodil.
honey bunny,
Ever satisfied.
honey bunny,
Little